Alright, so I've spent a lot of time doing Dragon Con stuff. Time to get back to the normal swing of things. I got a lot of catching up to do. Like, a ton of catching up to do. Because I missed the entire month of September, and honestly the first couple weeks leading up to it, so the last couple weeks in August, there's a lot that's actually happened that I just haven't made videos on. I would have done all of the unboxings, but I just never got around to them. So I unboxed them. I said, I'll talk about it later at some point. So that's what this is. This video is a catch-up video. I'm going to catch up on all the things I need to catch up on so I can be caught up. And then we can go from here and get back to kind of the normal pace of having reviews and interesting content. So we're going to dive right in with what's basically some first impressions and showcasing of some of the things I have actually gotten my hands on in the past month and a half. First up, the Cold Steel Kriegmesser. So I picked this up. I got it essentially from my good old credit card rewards program. Allows me to buy anything I want off of Amazon, and usually the only thing I want off of Amazon is more swords. Good books too, but mostly swords. And there's only a few sword makers who actually post and sell their wares that I would actually trust on Amazon. Cold Steel is one of them. Cass Hanway does some as well. But I've always wanted to get a Kriegmesser, and this is the cheapest one you can basically get. I got the non-MAA version. And my initial impressions are I really wish they had made it an actual Kriegmesser. Because obviously it's not an actual messer because it doesn't have an exposed tang. This is then technically a falchion with a knuckle guard. Whatever. We'll just go with it. Back edge of this is not sharpened. That's also very disappointing. It's actually very thick there. But the sword itself, the actual sharp side, is actually quite sharp. Right after having gotten it, probably like 30 seconds after really unboxing it, I got to go do cut tests. We were getting some people within my HEMA club caught up on doing some general cutting stuff and learning how to get really basic edge alignment using water bottles, which of course are very easy to cut, but they're also really easy to bat around like a baseball or tee them off like a t-ball. And that's because of bad edge alignment, and you get to at least learn some basics before you graduate to something like tatami mats. It's a good cheap replacement. I got to use this a bit. Used it a couple times on some really big bottles, like milk jugs and whatnot. Hey, it's a fun weapon. It's a little bit hefty, a little bit heavy. I feel like it's more blade heavy than I really expect it to be, given the length of the handle. And again, I wish it had been made more traditionally. The way I understand it, essentially, it does have a full tang, and it does have through handle rivets that are properly made, but the pommel piece is actually just like a screw-on, bolt-on type thing. It's not really a messer. Oh well, it'll be a stand until I get a really good one. But it's actually pretty fun. I enjoy it. It's a fun little sword, and again, since I essentially got it for credit card rewards, not too shabby. But yeah, it was only a couple $100, and I figured it'd be a fun thing to have. So I unboxed that. I used it a bit. We'll see about a review for it, although I'm probably not going to prioritize it. There's enough out there. I know Scholagrim, I believe, has a good review of this. A lot of people buy Cold Steel stuff, and there's enough reviews of these type of things out there. So I probably won't prioritize it, but I might get around to it one day. Yeah, we'll see. Next up, I have this Gunstock Club. Yeah, so interesting story behind this. I went to a Creek Nation powwow, essentially. It's not really the Creek Nation. It's kind of a quasi Creek Nation powwow. The history behind it's actually very interesting, and there's a kind of eventful thing that happened at this. It's essentially a fall festival that occurs, and it's done as a powwow for part of the Creek Nation. That's a Native American tribe out of the general Georgia area, but certainly the North Georgia area. And this happened at a park called McIntosh Reserve. It's a national park. The history behind it's actually pretty interesting. Certainly during the time of colonial expansion, when people were going after Indian land, i.e. Native American land, there was a lot of buying going on. They were actually purchasing the land wholesale. And then if they didn't agree to buy it, they would actually just tend to go kick them off the land and take it. So, good old American history with all of its fun eccentricities. But there is a chief of the Creek Indians. His name was William McIntosh, and that was his Anglicanized name. He was actually born from a Scottish settler, but his mother was Creek Indian. And he kind of had feet in both camps, and he really tried to find a balance, I think is the best way to say it, between the two almost warring groups. And it cost him, because he ended up selling the Creek Nation land to the colonists, and the Creek Nation was not very happy about that and went and killed him. And ever since, this is mid 19th century, ever since, he's been kind of what's the opposite of revered, right? He's not been a very good character for the Creek Nation. They basically despised him. Hindsight being 2020, it's kind of hard to say that he did the wrong thing. I think he was trying to lessen the suffering of his people as best he could by at least getting some money for the land. But it's this interesting thing that basically creates this interesting scenario of there being like a partial Creek Indian powwow, but it's mostly people who have that as a partial heritage and not the actual true Creek Indian tribe. What's interesting about it is that this year the Creek Indian finally recognized this powwow as kind of a thing that is good for the Creek Nation and good for preserving their history, and they're actually going to be more involved in it in the future. That's actually a very interesting thing. 170 some odd years after the fact, they're beginning to mend some old wounds, and that's an interesting thing. But anyway, it's a fall festival. It's a good time to go get fried Oreos and boiled peanuts and all the things that make Georgians like me a little bit fatter. But also to enjoy some of the heritage. It's not my heritage, but I enjoy seeing other cultures and how they're represented. And there are some makers there who make some interesting things, and there is this really cheapo Gunstock Club, and it's cheapo because it's made from a really, really basic buy at Home Depot piece of wood, cut to shape, and with a metal spike here. But it was only like $40, and so I was like, yeah, it's kind of worth it just to have something that's kind of an approximation of this. It was essentially a Native American war club, very, very commonly used actually by the Creek Indian tribe, and so really cool. There's a lot of interesting history and stuff behind this, and I've always wanted to kind of expand my collection to weird, more eccentric things or things that I don't get to use a lot. These are much more ceremonial these days, but they were very useful. It's called a Gunstock Club because of the shape of it. It kind of looks like it's the butt of a rifle, where you'd have like maybe the armrest and a trigger, etc. But it wasn't actually made out of gun stocks. It was actually just made of branches and things that kind of looked like them, and that's actually what the colonists were calling them, and so that's kind of the name that we get from them. Very interesting weapon. I figured I'd pick one up. I'll find a place to display it. Honestly, there's a lot I have to say about the beauty of Native American weapons, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more here in just a moment. But first, I also want to talk a little bit about this one thing that I picked up, and it's just a traditionally made arrow. Now, this is traditionally made for how Native Americans would have done it. Really basic wood shaft, knapped stone arrow head. It is wrapped and taken care of and actually essentially glued with some waxy type substance, and of course that's sinew, and the same thing is done here for the fletching. What's interesting is that this fletching has actually had kind of a waxy, almost epoxy put over it to kind of keep the feathers nice as they should be. But it's all put together very traditionally, and I figured it'd be kind of cool just to have an arrow that represented, well, how they made it. Because I actually never have really seen one complete, or at least been able to hold one, even though it's a modern reproduction. It's been made in a traditional method. I think it's pretty cool. And again, that's the neat thing about a powwow like this, is that me coming from an Irish and Italian heritage and being a complete mutt, and all that being much more recent, and even the American heritage side of it, I have almost no connection to any of this. But I love seeing people who are passionate about their connections to their heritage. And that's really cool. So I picked this up as well. Same guy who made the Gunstock Club made bows and arrows, and he made them of different draw weights, and he was selling them for actually pretty cheap. I already got a good bow, so I didn't really need it, but I wanted to pick up the arrow just to represent something kind of neat. So I picked those up. They're kind of minor things. I'm not going to be reviewing them. They're just there kind of for show and tell. And finally, I really wanted to get this weapon that is one of my favorites, and I wanted to get one that was well made and properly made for its purpose. And so I went out and tried to find some reproductions. I ended up with not one, but two Macuahuitls. I might be saying that right. Some people call it a Macuahuitl. I think it's kind of, I'm not really sure which one it is. Good old kind of odd language barrier issues for me. But either way, it's a very interesting weapon. These come from kind of Mayan Aztec cultures. A lot of people are really adamant that it's only Mayan. Some people are really adamant that it's mostly Aztec. It's a Mesoamerican weapon, and it's really neat, and I really like these things. But I'm going to go through them one at a time. I'm going to put this one down for a moment. So this is the first one I got as a reproduction. I got it because it looked real nice, and I was hoping that these pieces, which are normally obsidian, would be actual obsidian. In getting it, I found out they're just kind of plastic, shaped like obsidian. That's a little bit disappointing, so it makes it a lot less functional for its purpose, how it was designed. But I really like that they actually did this wood-burned inlay on it. It's a little bit thicker than I think they're supposed to be. They're supposed to actually be pretty thin weapons comparatively, but it's made interesting. It's actually pretty light, but it's a nice sturdy wood. Made in a fairly traditional manner. They obviously used a modern epoxy to get these faux obsidian pieces glued in. The obsidian pieces aren't really sharp at all. This is as sharp as they come. It's sharp enough, like you could probably do a little bit of damage with it, but they're plastic, and I wanted something that was a little bit more representative of the actual Macuahuitl, which is why after buying this one, I went and picked up another one. And that would be this one right here. Now, it's significantly smaller. You can see the size difference here. But this one is made with actual obsidian. So there's the actual obsidian, and it's sharp. They actually made a note when I was buying it. They said, we are blunting these as much as possible. They can still really hurt you. One of my friends actually very quickly found that out because he said, I want to see it. And I said, okay, just understand it's obsidian. It's really sharp. So be very careful with it. The first thing he did, not 2 seconds after picking it up, was touch the edge of one of the pieces of obsidian and cut himself a bit. But anyway, I digress. These are very sharp, but they are as blunted as possible. These are traditionally knapped into a nice sharp edge, and I'm not touching it, as you can see, because sharpened obsidian, you can look at it and it will cut you, it seems like. This one is a lighter wood, so it's okay. It is furniture wood. They actually got the wood from a kind of recovered from old furniture, so it should be pretty sturdy, good solid wood, but it is pretty light. But I wanted something a little bit more traditionally made, so while I had the really cool looking one, I wanted one that I could say this is what it would actually kind of look like. It's just as thick, really, in terms of width, and this is one of the things about a Macuahuitl is that we don't really know what they looked like. We have some drawings that came from colonial era. We have descriptions of them, but there's no like surviving artifacts that I'm aware of. I don't think there are any. And so all we really know about them is that they existed and they were war clubs that looked approximately like this and were made in a certain way. And in theory, they're a little bit thinner. So everything you'd ever see of these is actually reproduction. But yeah, I've been really excited to show this one off. I've had this, well, I had this one since before DragonCon. The other one I had a couple weeks before that. I wanted to do videos on them, but I was so busy with DragonCon, I just never got around to it. So I'm really excited to talk about these in the future. October's coming up. That's pumpkin season. I think this one's going to meet a pumpkin at some point. Just saying. I'm looking forward to that. So I'm excited to also use it, see how it holds up. I'm going to give this a good functionality review as well, because I'm hoping it is actually functional. One of the interesting things about weapons like this is that pretty much everyone will always tell you this is a reproduction for decorative purposes, etc. Because no one wants to put their name on a weapon that may or may not hurt someone when it breaks, and then say, well, I told you it wasn't functional. But honestly, these are very simple weapons, and the dangerous part is the obsidian. So I'm gonna give it a risky try. We'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun. I know what I'm doing. I keep myself safe around all my weapons, generally speaking. So I'm okay. I'll be all right. Can't say the same for the pumpkins that will meet this. But I'm really looking forward to it. And I have to say, I really do love. There's something about this weapon that I just really appreciate. I find it fascinating. I find it very beautiful. Very interesting solution for making a killing weapon. It was made a very, very long time ago originally. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun. I'll do a good review of it. But with that, I have now caught up on everything that I have unboxed since before DragonCon. It's been a long month and a half. I'm ready to get back into the swing of normal things. I'm excited for some of the new content I'm going to be bringing. Certainly there are quite a few reviews that are lined up at this point that I got to get through. The rebranding, I'm excited for the rebranding. I hope you guys will enjoy it. It's mostly just minor things again, but I got an awesome new intro title sequence for my channel. Brand new custom logos. They're all over the place already. Getting rid of the poor old Bonacon. He's gone. I'll revisit him at some point. I got some things that reference him that will still be around, but the Bonacon has to go. It's time for me to be a little bit more serious, a little bit more professional in my YouTube channel. So I'm going to ditch the old manuscript drawing, and I'm going to go for something a little bit more custom. I really have enjoyed working on the rebranding. It has tested my skill some. I hope you guys appreciate it. Yeah, it's going to be fun. So by the time this video goes up, the Patreon backers will already have their hands on the new review. It'll be coming out probably a week-ish away from this video publication. Backers get first dibs on the video, so they get to see it early. If you would like to see reviews earlier, go check out Patreon. Even just $1 per video is enough. It's really I don't self-promote a lot, but Patreon has really helped in terms of taking care of a lot of what has happened with ad revenue on YouTube. So any support I can get there is always great, but that's about the extent of the begging for money I'm going to do. I'm just really looking forward to getting back into doing reviews and bringing you guys some new content. I'm ready to go. Let's do this. See you in the next video.